Well, hello there friends, and welcome once again. My name is George here at Softube Studios, and the subject of today's video is rings from Mutable Instruments, the newest addition to Modular, our Eurorack soft synth. This is a particularly fabulous piece of kit because it emulates the ways in which real physical objects make and reinforce noises by means of banks of tuned bandpass filters which resonate in sympathy with one another and create all kinds of realistic sounds, from glassy bell sounds all the way to bowed and plucked strings and passing through woody kind of block noises and so on. It's a very exciting thing, and it has an enormous amount of versatility and vibrancy to it. I'm going to just talk you through some of the very basics, and we will see what we think. We're going to hear some cool noises. So I'll start by patching the output of rings to the main output of Modular so that we can hear whatever noises we might create. And then let's send a note value into the volt per octave input. If we do that, every time we press a key on our keyboard, rings will create a short burst of noise within itself which excites those filters and they start to resonate. This is the way that the noise is created. You have to have an excitation and then the resonant characteristics of the imagined object, the object that's being emulated, hypothesized by these filters. It will start to resonate and the sound will dissipate in a different way depending on how those filters are configured. So let's also send a trigger input into the strum here, because if we only have the volt per octave input activated, the impulse will be created only when we change note. So pressing the same note over and over again won't create a new sound. Let's send a trigger in, and now we have a fully behaving instrument. We can also send audio into the audio in here. Let's just try that for fun. We'll send a trigger into there and we get a kind of unpitched resonance. You can send anything you like into there, drums, vocals, all kinds of things, but we'll save that for another video perhaps. Let's return the trigger to the strum input and the note into the volt per octave there. That basically modulates the frequency knob here, but we can do that by hand. Very exciting. There are other controls to the timbre of the sound here in rings. You can extend the sustain of a note by increasing the value on the damping knob here, or decrease it, of course. You can change the brightness, the overtone structure, give it more or less. That's kind of fun. And then there are a couple of more oblique ways to change the timbre of the sound. This position knob changes the position in which you strike the alleged object, in much the same way as hitting a drum in the center or on the edge creates a different noise. And up at the top here, the structure knob very cleverly emulates the resonant characteristics of different materials. So to the left it's kind of woody and earthy, in the middle kind of metallic, and to the far right more glassy. It's lovely. So the first of these modules, what we've been listening to so far, is called modal synthesis, and that emulates the way that certain resonance structures, plates and bells and pipes reinforce certain frequencies of sound when excited by a slap or a blow to create a noise. They reinforce certain frequencies and they absorb others, so you get these modal points due to the geometry and the size and shape and the material of these objects which resonate. The second type of resonator built into rings, though, is called sympathetic strings, and that creates a situation where you have a main sort of plucked string and various resonating sympathetic strings, like on an instrument like a sitar, for example. Let's turn up the brightness and the damping and have a really good listen to how that sounds. This structure knob here now allows you to change the tuning of those sympathetically vibrating strings and gives you the opportunity, as you can imagine, to create all kinds of textures and moods. And perhaps now's a good opportunity to feed some noise into the audio input of rings to demonstrate how that can work to your advantage. And now we're of course not exciting the resonator with a simple pulse of noise. we're feeding it a continuous flow of noise like a kind of wind blowing across a surface or some kind of wind instrument. So that's a completely different way to create noises, and depending on what you want to input into the module, you can create almost anything you can imagine. The audio input there is open for pretty much all business, so you could feed external audio drums or a vocal in there and get all kinds of crazy sounds out of it. Thirdly, and by no means leastly, we have the InHarmonic or modulated string model. Now this is sort of created by an extension of the Karplus-Strong synthesis method, which uses a very, very short delay line with high feedback to create a synthesized waveform. You kind of stack up lots of repeats of a pulse and it comes into a kind of a focus as a pitched wave. But it also contains irregularities in that feedback loop which create degrees of inharmonicity. That is to say, the harmonic content above the fundamental note created is more or less in tune, more or less in harmony with the original fundamentals. So we can create a simple string sound. In fact, why don't I start my loop going here so that I don't have to prod my keyboard every 5 seconds. And we'll listen to the different ways in which you can change the sound and the inharmonicity of that string. Obviously, damping and brightness work pretty much the same way in this model to create more sustain or less, and the brightness gives you more overtone content or less. But the position in this mode is particularly interesting because the place on which you pluck that string, the position at which you take a bite out of it, obviously massively affects the quality of the sound. And similarly, the structure knob in this mode is of interest because it changes the particular characteristics of the overtones of the sound. There is a particularly inharmonic sound, of course, with lots of shash and noise to it. And that's a much cleaner, more kind of harp-like noise. And in fact, this might be a particularly good sound on which to show off my favourite little trick that this module has up its sleeve. In the top left here, you'll see there's another button which cycles through the different polyphony modes. In one, you have just one note. So each new note cancels out the last. But Rings has built into it a means by which it can create a new virtual string for each note, up to a maximum of 4. So let's put it into 4, and you will hear the tail of the first note ring out while the second begins, and the third and the fourth. Especially as I increase the sustain. This allows you to create plucked and strummed chords like a harp or a guitar, and any number of groovy noises are possible in what is essentially still a monophonic instrument, a modular synth. So this is a cool little life hack. And even cooler, you can send a second output so that the odd and even harmonics get scattered left and right. And all of a sudden we're in a kind of exciting sound world. Screwing around with the inharmonicity of that string is fun too. Oh, I could just play with this thing all day, and I encourage you to do the same. It's really exciting to hear these kind of organic sounds in a modular synth environment. It's not just zeros and ones, even though it is a digital module originally. It's emulating the physical characteristics of real objects in such a way as to bring an enormous amount of life into your sound. So I encourage you to grab a copy, whether it's on demo or full license, and enjoy the heck out of it. Tell us what you think in the comments below, and we'll see you again soon. Thanks very much for watching. Bye-bye.